What is going on, guys? The Negro Shot here, and today I'm going to give you guys a quick review for X-Men Apocalypse. And I gotta say, going out of this movie, I don't know what the heck these critics are talking about. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. Like, this movie it was good. It wasn't phenomenal. It wasn't on the Days of Future Past level. It wasn't on that level. It was a little bit below First Class to me, but it wasn't a bad movie. Like, it wasn't it didn't have problems like X-Men Last Stand. Like, it didn't have X3 plot problems. Like, it wasn't on that X3 level, but it was still a good movie. It was still an enjoyable movie. And like I said, I thought it was a good movie. It wasn't phenomenal, but it was good. A lot of the complaints I'm hearing from critics over and over, from every video I see, from every review that I've read, it's just it's mind-boggling to me how people are complaining about this movie for all these like, I think there's some valid points, but then there's some points that I'm just like, okay, did y'all actually either like do some research on this character, or like did y'all critics actually, like, I don't know what you were expecting. Were you expecting Shakespeare out of this movie? Were you expecting something that was a lot deeper from the villain himself or from these characters? And there are deep, and don't get me wrong, because there are deep moments in this movie. I'll try not to spoil too much, but I just feel as though a lot of critics. So okay, so I'm gonna probably go ahead and get into sort of the negative stuff that I'm hearing from a lot of these critics first. I'm gonna go ahead and debunk a few of these criticisms for the. Excuse me. I don't know what the heck just happened. Oh man, but shoot, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and debunk these criticisms for this movie. So first of all, I'm gonna go ahead and get into a few criticisms that I think, for me personally, I think they were valid criticisms on the critics' part. So first of all, I gotta say that Jennifer Lawrence, y'all already knew this was coming. Jennifer Lawrence, just like everybody else says, I gotta say her performance, it wasn't the best thing in the world. Here's the thing on Jennifer Lawrence. Now, I don't think you have to be a rocket science to tell why she is so front and center in this movie. Jennifer Lawrence, she puts butts in seats. She's a very popular actress at this point, and really they're banking on her star power pretty much. And since Hugh Jackman wasn't really in this movie, I mean, he's in this movie, but he's not in this movie in a big capacity. So of course, from the studio perspective, they want to get Jennifer Lawrence front and center, and so that's why she plays a pivotal role in this X-Men. And like, even my brother, who also went to go see the movie, even he pointed out the fact that he just like, why is Mystique, like, he hated the fact that Mystique was pretty much a good guy in this movie, and that's something that I kind of don't like with like the direction that they're taking. Is like, why is Mystique going to be a good guy when we know in the future, like, we know that she's usually a villain, and we know this from the comics, we know this from the animated series and everything. So I will say this: I hope in the upcoming movies there's going to be a rift, or a how do you say this? Well, just a rift between her and the rest of the X-Men, like a falling out, if you will, because there has to be a reason that she becomes a villain. Because we know where her and Magneto, we know where they end up. They end up on the opposite side of the X-Men. So I thought Jennifer Lawrence, her performance was, pretty weak. And I hate the fact I hate the fact that she was like barely Mystique. Like she was barely transformed in that movie. Like you can see Jennifer Lawrence in this movie. You don't see Mystique. Like she barely wears that blue makeup and stuff. And I know it's because she's been complaining because she doesn't. I guess she doesn't like to be in all that makeup or whatever. But it's like, look, man, you took the role. You took the role. If you don't like it, then don't take the role anymore. And from the studio perspective, they're okay. Like they want to please her because, you know, again, star power, and again, she's popular. She'll put butts in seats. But that's something that I'll say is a legit criticism. Is Jennifer Lawrence, and then Storm, Psylocke, and Angel, who are like the horsemen in this movie. I thought they were so underutilized, and they were just there. They really just was there, you know. Especially Storm. I thought Storm didn't really do too much, and it's kind of disappointing for me personally, because Storm is like one of my favorite female superheroes next to Satana. So it's like I haven't gotten a legit Storm on screen because God knows Halle Berry did a horrible job. But I'll say this, at least they gave her an accent this time, because I don't remember Halle Berry ever doing an accent. So I'll give them you know, props for that. I kind of didn't like that they made her a street urchin, but you know, I'll go ahead and, you know, I can accept it. But yeah, Storm, Psylocke, and Angel didn't really do much. You know, they like I said, they were just there. So let's see. Another criticism that I kind of get from this movie, and this is something that I don't agree with. So now we're probably gonna get into some more stuff that I don't agree with here. So one criticism that I'm seeing is that, okay, Apocalypse is too small. You know, I guess from a lot of people's perspective, I guess they would want the villain to be like this big, towering sort of presence. You know, they wanted him to be bigger. Apocalypse is a lot shorter in this movie, but I think it worked. I think it works on a lot of levels. Like he has a sort of Napoleon sort of. He has sort of a Napoleon. I forgot the actual word for this, but he has a Napoleon complex, is what I'm trying to say. You know, like he's one of those type of villains that I don't think he needed to be big. You know, I thought he worked for you know, what they were going for. And another criticism that I'm hearing is about the voice. Now, for me, I thought it worked. You know, a lot of people, like, the criticism is that, so what they do with Oscar, I think his name is Oscar Isaac, the guy that plays Apocalypse in the movie. So what they did for for certain times where like Apocalypse is yelling, they'll have like this voice modulator or whatever. Like they'll change his voice for like when he's angry or upset or yelling, you know. But when he's just talking to someone, like when he's talking to Storm or another mutant, he'll be talking in like a soft voice, you know. And I liked it. Maybe like, I don't know what everyone was expecting from him again, but I liked it on the level that, because this movie, you gotta know something about. Well, then again, you don't even need to know anything about this storyline in the comics or in like the animated series to appreciate it. It's like, for me, maybe I'm seeing this movie from a completely different perspective because of my religious beliefs. So I think, especially if you have religious beliefs, like if you're a Christian or anything like that, I think you might get a kick out of this movie. And I think you also might appreciate the villain a lot more, because I think that's for me. I think that kind of helps, because for me, Apocalypse, because even in the beginning of the movie, because I really don't want to spoil anything, but before the movie even starts, there's like this, not a monologue, but it's kind of like a narration at the beginning of the movie, and it pretty much says something about gods and stuff. It says some stuff, but I think that really just to get to the point, I think that it works. Oscar Isaac's performance works because he's kind of like a vengeful god. He says it in the movie. You've seen it in the trailers. He's like, hey, you're following blind leaders, and not to give too much away in the movie, but basically he's been betrayed. He's been betrayed in the past because they used to worship this guy. He was betrayed in the ancient Egyptian times, like you see in the beginning of the movie, and like his whole thing is he was supposed to be ruling for centuries because of what he was able to do, transfer bodies, not to spoil too much. But basically he comes back and like the world is completely changed. So he's vengeful, he's mad, and that's why I think, like I said, I enjoyed the performance, but I can get why, I guess, from a different perspective, y'all don't like that part of it, with his voice and stuff. I thought it was cool. Now, one thing I will say though, I didn't like his design of his actual character, the way he looks. I would have preferred that they made him look more like how he is in like the animated series and in the comics. Like, I didn't like the tubes and stuff coming out of him or whatever, the little wires and stuff. And yeah, I will agree, up close he looks ridiculous, but at least he didn't look like Ivan Ooze, like how he first actually looked like Ivan Ooze, the villain from the old Power Rangers movie. During like the first few months, we got a picture of how he was going to look at first, and he looked purple, and he just looked like Ivan Ooze. He looked ridiculous, but at least he looks a lot better in this movie. But I didn't like the way he looked. But overall, I enjoyed him as a villain. Like, I don't understand. A lot of people said, okay, he's a cliche villain, but here's the thing: Apocalypse himself is a very cliche villain. Even when I was a kid and I was watching I was watching the old X-Men movies and stuff like that. Well, not X-Men movies, but like X-Men animated series and stuff. And I'll say this, I don't read comics and stuff. Like I've never read an X-Men comic in my life, but I've watched a lot of the animated series growing up. A lot of the series from the 2000s and the 1990s and everything. And watching Apocalypse even back then, he never really grabbed me. He was like, every time he appeared on one of those shows, it's just like, okay, you're here to basically destroy the world, man. Like, that's who he is. He's a very cliche villain. Maybe y'all wanted them to do more with Apocalypse, but I don't see, like, I don't know what y'all were expecting, you critics and some other people out there that are trashing this movie, because I don't know if you were expecting to see Shakespeare, but it's Apocalypse. You don't even really have to know much about the character. It's in the title of this movie. What were you expecting to see out of this movie? Especially because another complaint I'm seeing is CGI, and I hate it. I hate it when people complain about CGI in a movie. Like, oh, it's too much CGI. I can see the CGI was terrible, but the CGI didn't look bad at all. The CGI didn't look bad at all. It never looks bad in these X-Men movies, except for maybe X-Men Origins or something like that. But I don't know what y'all were expecting out of a movie called X-Men Apocalypse. Of course they're gonna dump a bunch of CGI in this movie, It's the apocalypse. Look at the concept of this movie and look at who the villain is. It's just stupid. Like, I don't know what you guys were expecting. How else were they going to show off all the destruction and everything and the use of all the characters' powers in this movie? How else were they going to do that? people were complaining about like the final, I want to say like the final act of this movie, the final, I want to say like the final 15 minutes or whatever, where there's a bunch of destruction and stuff, and they was like, oh man, this movie just dragged on and on, especially during those scenes. But it's like, they're supposed to be showing you the end of the world almost. Like they're supposed to be showing you that, yeah, this world is pretty much going to be destroyed if the X-Men if the X-Men don't stop Apocalypse's plan. And so, yeah, it's supposed to be drawn out like that. And it's kind of weird how a lot of these movies get this criticism for using too much CGI. Because it's like, there's other movies out there, right? There are other movies out there. And I'm about to keep bringing Mad Max up in like every review I do for a movie from now on, that people are complaining about too much CGI. I'm just bringing up Mad Max because that is a movie I gotta say is completely overrated. The whole movie was just one long action scene. There were nothing to the characters and stuff, and the dialogue sucked. But in this movie, we get the complete opposite. Cause I haven't even talked to you guys about the characters in this movie and some of the conflicts and stuff that were going on. So like Magneto in this movie, Michael Fassbender, great performance. I like what they did with Magneto here. You know, after the events of Days of Future Past, he tries to settle down, but something happens to his family. That's all I'm gonna say, and it leads to a very emotional scene with Michael Fassbender's Magneto. And then we got, of course, what's his name, McAvoy. I'm trying to think of his first name. James McAvoy always does a great job as Professor X. Really, I gotta say, look, man, this movie got me to like Cyclops, because I don't really like Cyclops as a character. I've always hated Cyclops, especially as a kid. But this movie, Ty Sheridan did a good job as Cyclops. They were even able to sort of have fun with his powers in certain moments of this movie, and I enjoyed that, man. And there were a lot of funny moments in this movie. I mean, especially Quicksilver. Quicksilver is one of my favorite characters from the X-Men universe already. So I thought he did a great job. I can't remember the name of the guy who plays as Quicksilver. I thought he did a good job. I will say this: I'm kind of on the fence with him. Well, then again, I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm not gonna go ahead. I'm not gonna go ahead and finish my statement there. I'll just say that I like Quicksilver, and well, actually, I can actually say this because they kind of spoiled this in the in the trailer. So in the trailer, there's that part where like Quicksilver is talking to Mystique, and he's like, Magneto's my dad. And so like in the movie, there comes to be a point where actually Quicksilver can go and try to confront his dad. You know, go and pretty much tell him that, hey, you know, I'm your son. And he decides not to in this movie. That's not too big of a spoiler, but I'm on the fence as whether or not I would actually, you know, be okay with him just, you know, not telling him, because it's like at some point you know that God, I don't want to spoil it, but you know that something happens to his family in the movie, and it's like you could really give him you could really be a beacon of hope to Magneto, who's lost pretty much everything. So then again, let me stop, because I don't want to get too far into the spoilers or anything. But overall, I gotta say that this movie was pretty great. Like I said, it was pretty good. Another criticism, just to sort of get back to some of the things that the critics were saying. Another thing I gotta point out, because a lot of people, and I'm gonna have to get into spoiler territory right now. So if you haven't seen a movie, just leave for the next 5 minutes, or you could just like fast forward, because I'm pretty sure I got a few other things I want to talk about before I close out this video. But I gotta say that another thing that the critics, like, it seems like some of these people aren't paying attention to this freaking movie, man. Because there's like, okay, Apocalypse's plan, it didn't make any sense. They didn't explain it in the movie. Like, I don't know what he was trying to do. It was clear. It was pretty clear. It was clear as day. Spoiler alert, okay, so here's what he wanted to do. He basically wanted to start the whole world over again, basically, with whoever survived, and then use Professor X's powers to make sure that no one could betray him ever again, which is what happened to him in those ancient days, in those days in Egypt, in the beginning of the movie. And we all know what Professor X's powers can do because he's a telepath. You know, they've shown in Days of Future Past, and even they say it at the end of the movie when Magneto is talking to Professor X. He said something along the lines of, you know, if you wanted me to stay, you can just make me, because of his powers, you know, because of Professor X's powers. So Apocalypse was going to use his powers basically. So like once all the destruction is over and whoever was left, I guess, you know, even if they weren't mutant, because that's the whole thing. Apocalypse sees himself as a god. Even from the first narration or whatever that you hear in the first part of this movie, when the movie is first opening up, that ties back into it to say that, okay, this guy thinks he's a god. And he had those people in the beginning of the movie worshiping him and being servants to him. And basically, he wants to rule again. You can get that from his dialogue. You can get that from pretty much everything that he did in this movie. You know, it wasn't as like, oh my god. It wasn't hard to understand. You know, his plan wasn't that hard to understand. Like I said, some of you guys aren't paying attention to the movie. Y'all need to go ahead and watch the movie again because y'all didn't pay attention. Now, with that out of the way, I do want to go ahead and point a few more things that I liked about this movie. Okay, not to spoil anything, we finally get a good representation of the Phoenix. So hopefully I think they're gonna build on that in the rest of the rest of the movies. I think we'll probably get the Phoenix saga probably in like the next few movies. Let's see. There was also that jab to X3 in the movie, to The Last Stand, where Ty Sheridan Scott says something, because they go to a movie, like all of the younger X-Men, they go to the movie. We see them leaving out of the movie. They actually went to go see Return of the Jedi, and Jean asked something like, so which movie was the best? And like Scott replies something like, well, you know what they say, the third movie is always the worst. And that line right there caught me off guard. I was like, oh god, did they really just did that? They really just took a jab at their own movie. But not even only at, you know, X-Men Last Stand, but really at all of these movies that are like the third movie in the superhero franchises of all the third movie. Think about The Dark Knight Rises and Spider-Man 3, because that's what everybody hates. Everybody loves to hate on the third movie in these franchises. And in my opinion, you know, Spider-Man 3, not to get off subject, but like Spider-Man 3, X-Men Last Stand, those aren't bad movies in my opinion. You know, they have problems, but they're not bad. They're not horrible movies, because I've seen worse. But yeah, just to close out this review, I thought this was a great, you know, I thought it was a good movie. You know, it's a 7 out of 10 for me. Like I said, not as good as Days of Future Past, and it's not the best we've seen from Bryan Singer. Like I said, we had some underutilized characters in this movie, and of course, you know, Mystique. But overall, I thought the performances from the other characters, from the other actors in this movie, solid performances throughout. with the exception of, again, like I said, the Four Horsemen. I thought the movie was pretty solid, you know? I'm not going to point out any more spoilers or anything. I'm just going to go ahead and close out this video by saying you'll enjoy this movie. I mean, the first time I went to go see the movie, everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves, man. And like this is a very enjoyable movie. It's not Shakespeare. It's not the greatest X-Men movie in the world. It's not the greatest superhero movie in the world. And I get that Marvel has, you know, raised the bar and everything, but you can still enjoy this movie. And I think this movie is pretty good. So I'd say go out and see it. I think you'll have a great time. So let me know what you guys think about X-Men Apocalypse. This has been the Negro Shotty. I'm out of here. Peace.